The grave was fresh, the dirt still damp, but the twins beside it weren't crying for yesterday. They were mourning every day to come, alone, until a quiet rancher rode up the trail and said, "You don't have to be." Down by the crest of the knoll, tucked behind a crooked iron gate and weeping willow, were two figures curled like frightened dogs, a boy and a girl, both thin, both filthy, maybe 12 or 13, leaning against a freshly packed grave that still bore no stone. The girl had her arms around the boy, her skirts stiff with dirt, her knees scraped raw. The boy's hands were covering his face. The humming stopped when she looked up and saw him. Enoch didn't move, didn't speak, just nudged the horse forward and rode down the hill slow. The girl stood. She didn't run, didn't scream. Her dress was too short, her boots too big, and one of her braids had come undone. But she stood between her brother and Enoch, like a guard dog with cracked ribs. The boy, smaller, slighter, eyes rimmed in red, peeked from behind her arm, but said nothing. Enoch dismounted. The only sound was the creak of leather, the faint whistle of wind through the trees, and a magpie calling once from the fence post. The grave behind them hadn't been there last month. "Name's Enoch Granger," he said after a long beat, voice like gravel. "Yours?" The girl didn't answer, but her jaw clenched. "You bury her yourselves." A nod. "How long you been here?" Another beat. "Since yesterday," she rasped. "No one came." "No kin?" She shook her head. "No pa?" Another shake. Enoch glanced at the dirt mound. No cross, just a simple stone at the head, likely meant to be temporary. Someone had written "Mother" in charcoal across the face, but it had already begun to smear in the morning dew. "You hungry?" The boy looked up. The girl didn't answer. "I ain't with the law. Ain't from the church neither. I just got a cabin down a ridge. Food, warm fire. You can ride or you can walk. I ain't forcing either." "Why?" the girl asked. Voice cracked, throat raw. Enoch shifted. "Because somebody should have come for you. And nobody did." She didn't move, but she didn't stop him either as he stepped closer, pulling 2 pieces of jerky from his saddlebag and handing them out, one to each. She took hers with fingers that shook. The boy snatched his like a feral thing. Only once it was in his mouth did he start to cry again. Barely a sound, but enough to make her reach for him. "Names?" Enoch asked again, softer. The girl swallowed, wiped her nose on her sleeve. "I'm Lottie, he's Eli." "All right then. Lottie, Eli, let's get you off this hill." The trail back was quiet. They rode doubled up. Eli in front of Enoch, Lottie behind. She refused to let the boy out of her sight. Enoch didn't ask questions, didn't speak unless one of them looked frightened of the trees or the wind picking up. The whole ride, Lottie never unclenched her fists. She kept glancing back like she expected someone to be following, like something had been left undone. By the time they reached the cabin, the sun was low and the wind had turned. The cabin wasn't much, just one room, a small loft, and a lean-to, stable, but it stood strong, tucked near the tree line where the valley opened up. Smoke already trickled from the chimney. Enoch dismounted and helped them down, watching as Lottie grabbed Eli's hand before he could even wobble. "I'll get the stove going," Enoch said. "You wash up. Barrel's around back." Neither moved. "I ain't gonna hurt you. If I wanted to, I would have left you where I found you." That made Lottie flinch. But after a pause, she gave a single nod and led Eli away. Inside, Enoch stirred the embers to life, added water to the pot, and laid out whatever he had left. Beans, cornbread, dried apples. By the time the children returned, pink-cheeked and dripping, the cabin smelled warm and good. He handed them tin bowls and sat across the room while they ate like wolves. "You got family anywhere?" he asked finally. "No," Lottie said. "You, from town?" "Sort of. Mama moved around, said it was safer." Enoch tilted his head. "From who?" Lottie looked down. Eli didn't speak at all. They slept in the loft that night. Enoch gave them his extra quilts, and when Lottie asked why he was being kind, he said, "Because I got no one else to give this to." 3 days. Later, she started crying in her sleep. Lottie didn't remember it, but Eli did. Said she called for their mother, begged her to wake up, said the ground was too cold, her hands too still. She'd clawed at the covers like she was trying to dig something up. When Enoch climbed the ladder, she was already shaking. He didn't touch her, just sat on the top rung and said, "It ain't weakness to miss her. You ain't gotta be tough in your sleep." Lottie turned away. The past didn't come in all at once. It came in flickers, in the way Lottie refused to sleep if the door wasn't bolted, in how Eli flinched when he heard boots, in the way they both went silent when someone rode by on the trail below. And then, one afternoon, it came all at once. They were boiling. Potatoes. Lottie peeled, Eli stirred, and Enoch mended tack at the table. The wind outside had picked up, rattling the window panes. "Wasn't a sickness," Lottie said suddenly. Enoch looked up. "What?" "What took Mama? It wasn't no sickness." Eli dropped the spoon. "She was scared," Lottie went on. "Kept saying we had to keep moving. Said someone was following, a man. I think he knew Pa." "You said you didn't have a father." "We don't. Not one that stayed. But this man said he was coming to collect something Pa owed. Mama said she didn't have anything. We ran," Eli whispered. "But he found us anyway." Lottie nodded. "He came to the boarding house one night. We heard her scream. She told us to run. We hid out back. I think she fought him." Enoch set down the leather strap. "When we came back in, she was bleeding," Lottie said. "Real bad. She held us and told us we had to be brave. Told us to find someone good. Someone better." "She died that night," Eli said. "On the floor. We buried her the next day behind the church." The room went quiet. Lottie stood. "You don't have to keep us. We can leave tomorrow. I just thought you should know." Enoch stared at the stove. "I buried my wife," he said. "And my boy. Years ago. Fever took 'em both. Cabin's been quiet since." She said nothing. He stood. "Don't talk to me about leaving," he said gruffly. "You sleep here tonight. And the next. And as long as it takes until that fear stops chasing you." Eli cried then, for the first time without hiding it. Lottie didn't move, just sank into the chair and nodded, her shoulders shaking. It wasn't a decision Enoch Granger made with words. He never had been a man of speeches. But by the end of that week, the boots he left by the door weren't alone anymore. There were smaller pairs now, worn and cracked, but side by side. A girl's braid hung from a nail, where she'd tied it off with a strip of leather. The boy had started whittling bits of pine, his curls full of wood dust. Every sign of them was small, quiet, easy to miss, but permanent. Lottie took to the chores faster than she took to trust. She was up before dawn every day, even when Enoch told her not to be, hauling water, mending clothes, splitting kindling. She didn't ask permission, didn't complain, just worked like she was proving something. Like every extra bit of effort might earn her and Eli another day under that roof. Enoch tried to tell her she didn't have to do that she wasn't beholden, but her eyes only hardened when he did. She knew what the world did to those who stopped trying. Eli stayed close to her shadow, but slowly a flicker of light returned to his eyes. He started leaving the loft on his own, started walking the ridge at the edge of the property, just to see how far the land stretched. He laughed once, startled himself when he did it, and then laughed again, just to be sure. He asked Enoch questions about horses, about tools, about the stars. Sometimes so fast Enoch couldn't answer them all. But he tried, because he'd forgotten what it meant to be needed. They had been there 2 weeks when the letter came. Enoch wasn't expecting mail. The rider didn't knock, just left it wedged under a stone by the fence. Lottie found it first. Her face changed the moment she read the scrawl on the envelope. Her lips parted, breath gone, and she backed up like it might bite her. Enoch saw it from across the field. He wiped his hands, came over, took the letter from her slowly. She didn't stop him, didn't speak. The envelope wasn't sealed, just folded over. The handwriting was sharp, confident, careless. Inside, one line. You took what was mine. I'm coming to collect. There was no name, no signature, just the heavy weight of a past that had found them. Lottie sat down in the dirt. She didn't cry, didn't tremble, but her eyes were gone, glazed over, far off, as though she'd left her body entirely. "Who is it?" Enoch asked. She didn't answer. Eli came running from the barn, holding up a horseshoe he'd found. "Lottie, look what?" He stopped when he saw her face. "What happened?" he whispered. Lottie blinked like she'd forgotten where she was. "Nothing," she said, voice a whisper. "Go back inside." "Lottie?" "Eli. Please." The boy turned to Enoch, but the rancher had already taken the letter and folded it twice. "It's all right, son. Why don't you go start the fire? I'll be in shortly." Eli hesitated, then went. Enoch stood beside her. "Tell me the truth." Her mouth opened, then closed. When she spoke, it was quiet. "His name is Whit Kersey. I don't know much, only what Mama told me." "Tell me." She nodded once, gathered herself. "He and Pa were part of something bad. Mama never said what, but after Pa left, Whit came looking for him, said he was owed. Mama gave him what little she had, and we ran. But he kept finding us, always, no matter where we went." She looked at the letter. "He said if Pa didn't pay, he'd take something worth more. Said he'd take it from Pa's blood." Mama knew he meant us. "And when he found you?" She swallowed. "She tried to protect us. She died trying." Enoch folded the letter again, slid it into his coat. "You won't be alone this time," he said. She looked at him. "You hear me? I won't let him touch you. Either of you." "But you don't even know us," she said, voice cracking. "I know. Enough. And that's all I need." The days passed faster after that. Enoch became more alert, more cautious. Every knock on the cabin wall, every creak of saddle leather in the distance made him reach for the rifle mounted above the hearth. He never let Lottie or Eli go down the ridge alone. He boarded the windows from the outside, fixed the hinges on the door so it swung faster, cleaner. But for all his caution, he didn't cage them. He taught Eli how to shoot a bow, carved from hickory and string. It wasn't for sport, it was for speed and silence. He taught Lottie how to lay traps, how to read tracks in the frost, how to find the sound of water even when none could be seen. She had sharp eyes. She picked up fast. "I'm not raising prey," he said one night. "I'm raising survivors." Eli smiled at that. Lottie only nodded. But one morning, the trap was already sprung, not by an animal, but a man. The snare had been cleanly cut, not ripped, not chewed, and the meat they'd baited with was gone. Enoch crouched near the tree line. The tracks were faint, but there was no mistaking the shape of the boot print, heavy, worn, deep heel. He walked back to the cabin and locked the door behind him. "Pack a bag," he said to Lottie, "for both of you. Food, water, warm clothes, only what you can carry." She looked up. "He's here, soon enough. What are you going to do?" "Buy time." That night, Enoch didn't sleep. He sat in the chair by the fire, the rifle across his lap, oil lamp burning low. He watched the door, listened for horses, for boots, for anything. Around midnight, Lottie climbed down the ladder. She didn't speak, just sat across from him and stared at the flame. "You could still run," he said. "Now, tonight, you'd make it to town by morning, and leave you here to face him alone. I've faced worse. You don't know him. I don't have to." She shook her head. "He doesn't want money or revenge. He wants power. He likes to take what doesn't belong to him." Enoch didn't look away. "Then he's never met someone who fights back." Lottie stared at him. "Why are you doing this, really?" He didn't answer right away. "When my wife died," he said slowly, I buried her by the cottonwoods. Same day I buried our son. Fever got 'em both. For a long time, I thought maybe I was cursed, like God had taken back the only good I'd ever had. He looked at her. But then I found you. She blinked. You and Eli, crying over a grave, just like I did. And I realized, maybe it wasn't a curse. Maybe it was a second chance. Lottie couldn't speak. You're not mine, by blood, he said. But I promise you this, I will not let him take you, not while I still draw breath. She reached for his hand, and for the first time, she didn't look like she was guarding herself. She just looked like a child. They came at dawn, not with a rush, not loud. No showy thunder of hooves or crack of gunfire. Just one man, on one horse, Whit Kersey. He didn't tie his horse. Didn't knock. He stood by the edge of the clearing, one boot forward, coat dusted with red clay. He looked like he hadn't bathed in weeks, but there was nothing wild in his eyes, only the kind of calm that came from believing the world owed you something, and that you were here to collect. Enoch opened the cabin door. He didn't step out, just leaned against the frame, rifle loose in his arms. You're trespassing, he said. Kersey smiled. And you're harboring children. I'm harboring children. That ain't what I heard. Enoch raised a brow. I heard you're hiding the spawn of a thief. The man who owed me more than coin, he cost me land, cost me blood. And when he ran, he left me no payment but the 2 brats he sired. I figure they're mine now. Enoch didn't move. Kersey's voice dipped. Unless you're the kind of man who'd die for another man's debt. No, Enoch said. I'm the kind of man who kills for it. And then the rifle came up. The shot never came. Kersey didn't flinch, didn't even shift his boots. The rifle stayed steady in Enoch's arms, aimed center chest. But both men knew something else had already begun to unfold. Kersey's eyes moved, slowly, to the cabin's upper window. A flicker of movement there, a silhouette. Eli, I wouldn't, Kersey said calmly. Enoch didn't look away. You threatening a child now? Just saying, if you're going to start this, you best be sure how it ends. 1 bullet ain't enough. You assume I only brought 1. Kersey grinned. You think I came alone? The silence cracked. Enoch's finger hovered on the trigger, jaw tight, but something behind Kersey shifted in the trees. A second rider, then a third. Both men in long coats, rifles slung low across their backs. They emerged slow, careful, just far enough to show they were there. No sudden moves, but the message was clear. Kersey raised a hand without looking. The riders stopped. See, he said. You and me, we're both men who understand leverage. Difference is, Enoch muttered. I know when I'm facing a coward. That made Kersey laugh. Coward's just a man who doesn't care to die for someone else's fight. Enoch stepped out onto the porch. That's where we part ways. The door, behind him, creaked open. Lottie stepped out, shoulders squared, eyes dark with fury. You want to talk about cowardice? She said. Let's talk about what you did to my mama. Kersey's grin faded. His eyes narrowed. She was never yours to take, Lottie continued. You hunted her like an animal. She died sick and scared in the woods because of you. And you think you get to come back now and act like we're yours? Kersey's face twitched. You think she didn't deserve what she got? She ran off with what belonged to me. She ran to protect us. She ran because she was weak, Kersey snapped. And weakness deserves consequence. The air stilled. Lottie took 1 step forward. My mama was 10 times the person you'll ever be, she said. She didn't die weak. She died fighting. And now you're going to die the same? He sneered. Maybe, Lottie said. But at least I won't die a coward. Then a voice from the trees said, That's enough. Everyone turned. The rider who'd hung back stepped into full view now. Older, heavy around the eyes, beard streaked with grey. Not one of Kersey's. Enoch stiffened. Marshal? Lottie looked from the man to Enoch, confused. The rider removed his hat. Marshal Dane Harrow. Sorry to show up uninvited. Kersey scowled. What the hell are you doing here? The marshal raised a brow. Had some letters cross my desk. Found a few folks asking about a man named Whit Kersey. One described the face of a man who liked to show up at new graves and threaten children. Sounded awful familiar. Kersey's hand inched toward his coat. Try it, Harrow said. Please, give me the excuse. Kersey stopped. Didn't think so. Harrow turned to Enoch. Mind if I come inside? Enoch stepped aside. Lottie looked at him, bewildered, but followed. Once they were inside, Harrow lowered his voice. I've been tracking Kersey for over a year. He's wanted in 3 territories. Racketeering, extortion, 1 charge of murder. He's slick, knows how to avoid writs, moves around, doesn't stay in one place long. But he slipped up. How? Enoch asked. Harrow pulled a sheet from his coat, a copy of the letter Kersey had sent. This, he said. This is mail, fraud, and a threat made across state lines. That makes it my jurisdiction. Can you arrest him? Not yet, Harrow said. Not without witness testimony. I'll testify, Lottie said without hesitation. Eli had come down the stairs now, quiet as a ghost. Me too, he said. Harrow looked at them both. You sure? It'll mean a trial, travel. You'll be in the papers. His people will know your faces. Lottie's voice didn't shake. We're not running anymore. Harrow told Kersey he had until sundown to leave the county. You, come within 10 miles of these children again. I'll see you swinging from a rope, he said flatly. Kersey mounted his horse. You think this is over? No, Enoch said. I think it's just beginning. The 3 men rode off. Kersey didn't look back. That night was the first quiet one in weeks. The first time Lottie let her shoulders fall. The first time Eli curled into a blanket without waking every hour in a sweat. Enoch sat by the fire, staring into the flames. Lottie came down with 2 mugs of hot tea and sat beside him. You think he'll really stay gone? She asked. No, Enoch said, but we'll be ready when he doesn't. She nodded. There was silence. Then she said, I used to believe the world hated us, me and Eli, like we'd done something wrong just by being born. Enoch looked at her. But now, she whispered, I think maybe God left us at that grave because he knew someone like you might come by. He swallowed hard, reached for her hand. You've got more strength in your little finger than most grown men carry their whole lives, he said. It ain't the world's job to be kind. That's our job. And I reckon I still got work to do. Spring came fast. Snow melted off the ridge. The creek began to run again. The twins helped Enoch replant the field, line by line. They built a fence from the timber out back. Eli grew taller. His voice deepened. Lottie smiled more. Not often, but real smiles. The kind that didn't apologize for being there. One day, she brought Enoch a box. Inside, the locket that had once been her mother's. I want you to keep it, she said, so you always remember you saved us. I don't need a locket to remember that, he said softly, but he took it, wore it under his shirt from that day on. They were at peace for nearly a season. And then the fire came. It happened fast. Too fast for accident. Middle of the night. Flames tore through the barn first. Eli woke to the scent of smoke, shouted for Lottie, who was already dragging her boots on. Enoch burst in, hauling them both down the stairs as the roof of the shed caved in behind them. The animals were screaming. The wind howled with sparks. By the time they reached the edge of the property, the fire had jumped to the house. Lottie stood there, watching the only home they'd known vanish in a column of heat. Enoch turned to Harrow, who'd arrived not long after the first smoke column rose. Wasn't lightning, he said. No, Harrow said grimly. It was Kersey, Lottie's fists clenched. He's not done. No, Enoch said, looking into the flames. He's just getting started. Ash clung to the morning. Black soot lined the bare, wet ground where a home had stood just hours earlier. Nothing remained but charred timber and scorched earth. The barn was a skeleton. The house a blackened memory. Even the old apple tree near the porch, Lottie's favourite spot to read, had gone up in flame. They'd watched it all burn, the three of them side by side. Nothing to do but wait for the fire to take what it wanted. Now the fire was gone, and the silence left in its place felt worse. Enoch stood ankle-deep in the ruin, boots sunk into mud and ash. His shirt was torn, his coat singed. A smear of soot across one cheek made the pale grief in his eyes look even starker. Lottie picked her way through the wreckage, blanket still wrapped around her shoulders, holding her mother's locket tight to her chest. Her mouth was drawn shut, like she'd sewn it closed herself. Eli followed a step behind, trying to find pieces of anything they'd once called theirs. Enoch squatted down near what had been the hearth, reached in with his bare hand, pulled something out. His fingers closed around it slow. A horseshoe. He turned it over. The metal was hot, warped by fire, but not melted. Lottie came beside him. That from the forge? He nodded once. Her voice cracked. It's all gone. Not all, Enoch said. We're still standing. She stared at him like she wanted to believe that was enough, but her eyes drifted over the smoking beams and the broken roof and settled on the small pile of bones near the barn, what was left of the goats. She looked away fast. Maybe standing ain't enough, she muttered. They didn't speak for a long time. Eli found one of his notebooks from school, half burned, but some pages untouched. He sat on a log and began tearing the ruined ends away, silent. Marshal Harrow returned around noon with a saddlebag full of supplies, bread, jerky, a few canteens of water, and word from the next town over. I found someone who saw Kersey. Headed south, he said. 3 riders total. Likely passed through Larkspur Crossing just before the fire. Asked too many questions. One of them matched the description of the man who was with him here. Did he leave a name? Enoch asked. Not his, Harrow said. But they mentioned yours, said they were looking to settle a score. Lottie looked up sharply. They're still hunting us. Harrow's jaw tightened. Looks that way. Then we hunt them back, Enoch said, calm as ever. The marshal gave a small nod. You're not wrong to think that way. But if you go at them blind, you'll be dead before they even see you coming. Enoch's eyes didn't waver. I don't plan to go blind. Lottie stood. Where do we start? Larkspur, Harrow said. I've got contacts there, folks who still owe me favours. It's a day's ride south. Enoch looked at the smoking ruin once more, then back at the twins. We can't stay here. No, Lottie said. This place died with Mama. We already stayed longer than we were meant to. The journey to Larkspur was rougher than expected. Rain came down hard for a day and a half, soaking their blankets and warping the old wagon Harrow borrowed for them. They took turns leading the single horse that hadn't run off during the fire. Food was scarce. No firewood dry enough to burn. Still, no one complained. The cold kept them quiet. The road kept them moving. Larkspur Crossing was a patchwork town, older than most, with faded red buildings and a courthouse that looked half a century from falling down. It sat in a shallow basin between hills, thick with scrub and snakeweed. The town's main street had 5 buildings total, a general store, a saloon, a bank, a post office, and the sheriff's office, which doubled as a jail. Harrow led them to a boarding house run by an old widow named Miss Clara, who offered them 2 rooms and a place at the table for supper. They took it. That night, around a lantern, Harrow laid out a map. Kersey's got friends in places like this. Old crew, maybe ex-Pinkertons turned bad, bounty hunters gone freelance. He disappears in small towns because no one thinks to look close. But why us? Eli asked. We don't have money. We're not important. You are to him, Harrow said. Your mother ran, took something he thinks he owns. Pride, reputation, maybe something else. Men like Kersey don't let things go. Especially not women who make them feel powerless. Lottie's face was unreadable. What if we draw him out? She said. What if we make ourselves seen? Enoch's head lifted. You think him bait? I'm thinking we give him something he can't ignore. Dangerous, Harrow said. More dangerous than waiting for him to burn another house down, Lottie asked. He'll come either way. At least this way, we choose where. They stared at the map. There was a canyon just east of Larkspur, narrow and deep, with one road in and out. Harrow said it had once been used as a stagecoach pass, but landslides made it dangerous, abandoned for years. That's where we do it, Enoch said. We pick our ground. We set the trap. The next 3 days were a blur of planning. Enoch rebuilt snares from old traps in town. Harrow borrowed rifles and arranged signal points. Lottie went to the post office and sent a letter to Kersey, not under her name, but her mother's. Meet me where we said we would, it read. I have what you're looking for. Enoch almost didn't let her send it, but she insisted. Kersey needs to think we're scared, she said. That we're desperate enough to come to him. Eli trained with Harrow, learning how to shoot straight, how to track boot prints through dust, how to tell the difference between a deer and a man crouching low in brush. The trap was set. They waited. 5 days passed. No sign. Then the 6th morning, a rider passed through town. Didn't stop. Just slowed near the post office, tipped his hat, and kept going. But Harrow recognized him. One of Kersey's. They'd taken the bait. That night, Lottie didn't sleep. She sat outside the boarding house, watching the stars dim one by one. Don't know if I'm brave, she whispered when Enoch came out to join her. You're here, aren't you? I'm tired of being hunted, he nodded. So we stopped running. At dawn, they rode out. The canyon was quiet. Wind stirred loose rocks down the cliff walls. Harrow took the high ridge. Eli and Enoch stayed low near the bend. Lottie was bait, standing in the open where the road curved just enough to hide the others from view. Her hands didn't shake, not once. The first shot came before noon, not at her, over her head. A warning. Then came the voices. 3 men. Kersey's was last. Well, he said, walking into view. Ain't this a familiar sight? Lottie didn't move. I've got it, she said. Oh, I know, he smiled. And I've got you. Then everything exploded. The first shot was meant to intimidate, but Lottie didn't flinch. Kersey stepped forward, his boots crunching gravel, the sun glaring hard off the high cliff walls. Behind him came 2 more men, both carrying rifles, both with the bored posture of men who'd killed before and didn't expect today to be any different. One had a scar so deep across his brow it puckered his eyes shut. The other, taller, walked, with a limp and kept one hand resting on a hunting knife tucked against his belt. Enoch lay flat on his stomach on the ledge above, rifle ready, eyes steady. Eli crouched behind a fallen log with his own gun shaking slightly in his grip, but aimed where it needed to be. Lottie didn't look their way. She stood alone in the dusty bend of the canyon road, braid tied tight, her mother's locket resting, just under her collar, her hands loose by her sides. You came, she said to Kersey. Wasn't gonna miss a reunion, he replied, glancing around. Though I expected your ma, not her little runt. She's dead, Lottie said flatly. His grin faded for half a second before twisting into something cruel. Then she finally did something useful. Lottie's fingers twitched, not from fear, but fury. She left a letter for you. Letter? Kersey snorted. She could have buried a knife in my back and I'd have thanked her faster. She said you'd come looking. Oh, I would have. Always knew your ma had too much pride and too little sense. Thought she could just disappear, with what she took. He stepped closer. The other men flanked out, slow and methodical, like wolves rounding a fawn. Where is it? He asked. Lottie reached inside her coat and pulled out a small canvas pouch. Here. Kersey's eyes glittered. That easy? It's always been yours, hasn't it? Her voice cracked just enough to sound real. He laughed. Don't mean I earned it. He stepped forward again, and that was when Harrow's whistle, pierced the canyon air, a sharp, warbling note like a hawk's cry. Then the trap sprang. A line of rocks tumbled from the ridge above, shoved loose by Harrow. They fell hard and fast, blocking the canyon entrance behind Kersey's men. Enoch fired next, one clean shot. The man with the limp dropped instantly, clutching his shoulder. Chaos erupted. The man with the scar dove for cover and fired wild. Kersey spun, ducked, and yanked Lottie forward by her collar, dragging her behind a rock. Enoch fired again. Missed. Eli's gun cracked once, too high. He cursed under his breath, heart pounding. Kersey pressed the barrel of his revolver against Lottie's ribs. "Call 'em off," he growled. "You'll shoot me?" Lottie hissed. "You came all this way to kill the one person who still looks like her." His jaw tensed. "I didn't come for memories." "No, you came because you're weak, and you needed to see if you still had power over something she loved." Another shot rang out, this one from Harrow. The man with the scar dropped to one knee, bleeding from the leg. Now it was just Kersey, still holding Lottie, still breathing heavy, still trying to decide if pride was worth dying for. "I should have killed her," he spat. "You did," Lottie said. "Every time you laid a hand on her, you killed a piece of her." His hand trembled. "And now," she said, low and steady, "you don't get to finish the job." She slammed her head backward into his nose. Hard, bone cracked. Kersey howled and dropped the gun. She broke free. Before he could recover, Enoch was there, barreling down the slope, boots sliding in dust. He tackled Kersey hard enough to knock the wind out of him. The revolver skittered across the ground. Enoch landed 2 punches before Harrow was there pulling him off. "Enough!" Harrow barked. "He's done." Kersey coughed blood onto the dirt. His lips split, one eye swelling shut. "You think this changes anything?" he wheezed. "There's more like me. Always more." Lottie stood over him. "Maybe, but you're not the man. You think you are anymore. You're just a ghost." He spat at her feet. They left him there. The canyon closed behind them as they rode out. Eli didn't speak. Lottie rode beside Enoch, not looking back once. Harrow stayed quiet until the town was in sight. "That was bold," he said. "Risky, but you pulled it off." "Thanks for your help," Enoch said. "You heading back north?" "Not yet." "Then what?" "I don't know," Enoch said. "But I ain't letting go of these two." The next days passed in uneasy, quiet. The 3 of them worked odd jobs in Larkspur. Enoch at the forge, Lottie at the mercantile, Eli cleaning stables. They slept under patched quilts in Miss Clara's boarding house. They ate supper in silence. It was Eli who finally spoke. "You think it's over?" "No," Lottie said, "but I think the worst of it might be." And she wasn't entirely wrong, but something still hung between them. An unanswered question, not from Kersey, not from the past, but from within their own house. One night, Enoch came into their room with a folded piece of paper, weathered, yellowed at the edges. "I found this in the pouch," he said. "You never gave him what he wanted, did you?" Lottie shook her head. "I never knew what it was." Eli sat up. "What is it?" Enoch unfolded the paper and spread it across the table. It was a deed, legal, signed and sealed, ownership of 180 acres, fertile land up near Willow Creek, the land Kersey had tried to claim years ago, the same land their mother had once worked, back when she had hope for something permanent. "She bought it," Lottie whispered, "before she ran and hid." "The deed," Enoch said. "She was going to build a new home." Eli looked at the map drawn on the corner of the page. "It's still ours?" Enoch nodded. "If we want it." Lottie stared at it. "Maybe it's time to stop running. Build something for real." 2 weeks later, they stood on that land. It wasn't much. Overgrown, fence posts rotted, cabin long collapsed. But the trees were strong, the soil rich. The creek nearby ran cold and clean. They set up a tent that night, slept under stars. No fire needed. Lottie woke first. The wind was gentle, brushing tall grass. She could still hear her mother's voice in the breeze. "You're stronger than you know." She smiled, closed her eyes. Maybe this time they'd stay. But trouble has long legs, and peace doesn't sit still for long. Miles away, in a dim back room of a saloon outside Silverbone Ridge, a man unfolded a newspaper and stared at the name in bold ink. A reward. For Kersey, dead or alive. Below that, a line from a deputy's report. Captured by a girl with a braid and her foster-kin, one of 'em a rancher, said their mother left 'em a deed. He folded the paper and leaned back. "Seems there's still gold in the dirt," he muttered. And just like that, another shadow began to form. 3 months passed. The land near Willow Creek no longer looked abandoned. Where there had been scrub and ruin, now a cabin stood, half-finished but sound, with smoke curling from the chimney each night, and hand-chiseled logs stacked neat along the side. A vegetable patch lined with stones began to sprout its first, hopeful rouse. The fence was patched in crooked sections with boards from 3 different sawmills, but it held. The soil had given them beans, onions, and enough late potatoes to last the cold spell. It wasn't much, but it was theirs. And every nail pounded into the beams, every calloused palm and blistered handprint, carried with it something sacred, earned. Enoch, Lottie, and Eli had made it through autumn with little more than grit and the shared determination that this time they would not run, that this place, however humble, would be the answer to every goodbye they'd been forced to swallow. But fate, like winter, has sharp teeth. And just when it looks like the worst is behind, it bites hardest. The first warning came in the form of a stranger on horseback. Enoch was mending a fence post out front when he saw him. The man was dressed like he belonged, dusty coat, worn boots, saddle-creased trousers. But the way he sat his horse told a different story. Upright, clean gloves, no tools at his hip. His horse was too fine, black mane groomed, saddle polished. Strangers don't ride pretty horses into broken places without reason. Enoch straightened, hand tightening on the hammer in his grip. Lottie came out from the shed, wiping her hands on her apron, brow furrowed. The man tipped his hat. "Afternoon. Can I help you?" Enoch asked. "Looking for Miss Lottie Wren," he said, eyes shifting briefly to her. Lottie stiffened. "Who's asking?" "Name's Declan Archer. I'm with the Wainwright firm, out of St. Louis." That name meant nothing to them, but the way he said it, like it should have, settled something cold in Lottie's gut. "I don't know your firm," she said. He smiled politely. "We represent certain interests of your mother's estate." Lottie blinked. Her estate? Declan dismounted with the practiced grace of a man who knew every eye was on him. "May we speak inside?" Enoch stepped forward. "We speak right. Here." Declan gave a thin-lipped nod, then reached into his coat and pulled out a leather-bound folio. "Your mother, Miss June Wren, had holdings previously believed abandoned. Recent documents, however, suggest otherwise. A revised will, witnessed and notarized, has come to light." He held up the paper. "It names you and your brother as legal heirs to the Wren holdings, including, but not limited to, the Willow Creek tract, an interest share in Silvercap mining, and a trust held in the First Bank of St. Louis." Lottie felt her knees go weak. Eli stepped from the barn just in time to hear the words trust and mining. "I don't understand," she said. "According to this, your mother had a claim to a share of the Silvercap lode. Looks like she walked away from it years ago, perhaps during hardship or personal reasons. But she never formally sold her share. Now that share has value again, considerable value." "Why now?" Enoch asked. "Why show up now, when the dust's barely settled?" Declan looked genuinely remorseful. "Because someone contested it. A man named Gideon Rusk claims to have been your mother's legal business partner." "I never heard of him," Lottie said. nor had we, until he produced a counterfeit deed and tried to take possession of the land. The court dismissed his claim, but it drew attention. Your names surfaced. And now what? Declan exhaled. Now there's legal ground to stand on. But the land you live on is tied to the assets. If you stay, you'll be asked to testify, possibly even fight to retain it. Lottie swallowed. And if we leave? The firm can assign a proxy. You'd give up all future rights in exchange for a one-time payment. How much? He told them the sum. It was more than they could earn in 10 years of honest work. Enough to buy 2 ranches, send Eli to school, replace every stitch of clothing they owned. But Enoch saw it in Lottie's face even before she answered. We stay, she said. We don't sell her name off like that. Not to strangers. Declan nodded slowly. Then I'll return with the appropriate forms. He left without argument, which, to Enoch, made him even more dangerous. That night, Lottie sat with her mother's, locket open in her palm. Inside was a lock of hair, faded copper, and a photograph barely visible from years of being pressed against skin. Her mother's face was nearly rubbed away, but the outline of her smile remained. I didn't know, Lottie whispered. Why didn't you tell us? She wanted us safe, Eli said. Maybe she thought if we didn't know, nobody else would either. But they found us anyway. Enoch came in from the porch. I think we need to prepare. For court? Eli asked. For trouble, Enoch said. The first sign of it came the next morning. A section of the garden was trampled, not by animals, by boots. Heavy, deliberate. And whoever it was, they left a symbol carved into the trunk of the cottonwood tree out back. A crude R inside a circle. Rusk, Enoch muttered, making his mark. Lottie stared at it with clenched fists. Let him come. But what came first wasn't Gideon Rusk. It was someone else entirely. 2 days later, a woman showed up on the ridge at dusk. Her dress was dusty, plain but fine cut, travel-worn but not tattered. She carried a satchel, rode a mule. Her face was older, weathered, but something about her made Lottie's heart knock sideways. She looked like June Wren. The woman dismounted and called out softly, Is this the Wren homestead? Enoch emerged, rifle in hand, and nodded warily. My name's Ruth Fenley, she said. Your mother was my sister, or was my... Lottie nearly collapsed. She sat in the kitchen with them an hour later, telling a story none of them were ready for, about how June had run off young to escape their father's cruelty, how she'd sworn never to look back, how Ruth had searched for her for years, sent letters that were never answered. She told me about the claim once, Ruth said. Back before she met your father. Said she bought it with the last of her inheritance. Told me to burn the deed if anything happened. But I didn't, I kept it, and now she reached into her satchel and laid another copy of the deed on the table, signed in June's handwriting, stamped with her real name, June Fenley Wren. It's yours, she said to Lottie and Eli. She wanted it to be, but there's more than land in that soil. There's blood. Men like Gideon Rusk, they don't stop at paperwork. Lottie's jaw clenched. Then we won't either. That night, while the wind scraped against the eaves, Enoch stood by the hearth sharpening his blade. Ruth slept in the spare room, and Lottie sat at the table, her mother's 2 deeds side by side. We need to build more than fences, she said. Eli looked up. What do you mean? We need allies, town support, a real defense. Enoch nodded. I know where to start. There's a man in Crossbone who owes me a favor. Think he's the type to help? He's the type who hates land thieves, more than he likes money. Eli stood. Then what are we waiting for? Lottie looked at them both. We fight. But this time, not just to survive. We fight to keep what's ours. Outside, under a bruised moon, the cottonwood tree swayed. The carved R still bled sap. But in the hearts of 3 orphans and a long-lost aunt, a new resolve was rising. And when Gideon Rusk came for the land, he wouldn't be facing children. He'd be facing a family. The first frost arrived like a whisper in the night. Silver fingers curled across the windows, tracing delicate lacework that made the cabin look beautiful and fragile. In the morning, Enoch stirred the hearth before dawn, his breath clouding before his face even inside. Outside, the air stung bare skin, the kind of cold that made tools crack, made bones ache, and always brought men like Gideon Rusk out of hiding. Lottie sensed it before the first hooves ever touched the trail. She stood in the clearing with her hands sunk into the dirt of the vegetable patch, trying to coax warmth from soil that had already given what it could. She didn't look up when Enoch stepped behind her. She only said, "They'll come today." "How do you know?" "I heard the hawks again. Same call as the day our mother died." Enoch didn't question it. There were some things he'd learned not to challenge, Lottie's instincts chief among them. Instead, he checked the rifle slung over his back, the revolver holstered at his hip, and gave a firm nod. "We're ready." They weren't. Not in any traditional sense. But what they had now was heart. And heart, Lottie believed, was more dangerous than any bullet. They'd spent the last 4 weeks doing everything short of preparing a battlefield, training Eli to fire with accuracy, reinforcing the cabin walls with timber braced in iron, and getting word to Sheriff Trent, who finally agreed to send a man to witness the claim standoff when it came. But when Rusk arrived, he brought no lawyers, only dust and thunder and 7 armed men on horseback, kicking up gravel like a cavalry battalion. Eli saw them first. "They're here." Lottie shot to her feet. Enoch was already at the porch. Ruth, steady in her bonnet and shawl, placed herself behind the children, hand resting on a Bible she hadn't opened since her sister's death. The riders fanned out across the clearing like wolves sniffing meat. Gideon Rusk sat in the center, high in the saddle, his beard clean trimmed and silver rings on both hands. His coat wasn't ranch-worn, it was stage-worn, deep blue velvet with a fine brass clasp, as if he wanted every man here to know he was. Wealth and power wrapped in flesh. "Lottie Wren," he called. She stepped forward, chin high, dress patched, but proud. "You're trespassing," she said. Rusk smirked. "So are you." "This land belongs to my mother. Her name is on the deed. Both copies." "Your mother," he drawled, "signed away her interest years ago. She just never lived long enough to see the deal finalized." "Pity," Eli snarled. "You're lying." "Boy, I got documents signed by a notary and 4 witnesses, 2 of them clergy." "I got blood," Lottie said. "Mine." Rusk narrowed his eyes. "You got 1 shot at this," Enoch said, stepping forward. "You ride off, no one follows. But if you stay, you start a war. And I don't fight clean." "Neither do I," Rusk said. Then everything exploded. It didn't start with a bullet. It started with a torch. One of Rusk's men hurled it toward the shed. Flames leapt like rabid dogs, licking the sky with orange teeth. Eli cried out, dashing for the water barrel. Enoch yanked him back just in time. Gunfire erupted in the same instant. Lottie dove behind the corral fence, grabbing the rifle they'd hidden in the hay bale. Enoch crouched low beside the porch, returning fire with calm, measured aim. His bullet caught one of Rusk's men in the shoulder, spinning him from the saddle. But the rest kept coming. Ruth pulled Eli back behind the root cellar door, pushing the Bible into his hands. "Stay down! Don't move!" Smoke poured from the burning shed. Sparks danced toward the eaves of the cabin. Lottie fired and missed, then fired again and heard the sickening thud of impact. But it wasn't over. Rusk advanced on foot, gun drawn, eyes locked on Lottie. "Your mother never told you, did she?" he growled. "She didn't walk away from that mine. She ran from me." Lottie's blood turned to ice. "You're lying. She took the deed after I refused to marry her, after I told her a bastard-born girl would never carry my name. She swore she'd raise you to hate me." Lottie's hands trembled. I'm your father," Rusk said. "And I'm here to collect what's mine." A scream tore from her throat. But not of fear, of rage. She lunged. The two collided in the dirt, Rusk's pistol knocked free by the force of her fury. Lottie punched and clawed, driven by every year of silence, every winter without fire, every moment her mother looked out a window and saw nothing but shame in the wind. Rusk struck back, knuckles cracking against her cheek. She staggered, but before he could land another blow, a shot rang out. "Enoch!" Rusk froze. Blood bloomed across his coat. He staggered to his knees, then fell forward, whispering something no one heard. It was over. The fire was put out by the storm that rolled in that night. Rain slashed across the hills like an angry hand, drenching ash and washing the blood clean from the dirt. The sky itself seemed to grieve. In the morning, Sheriff Trent arrived with 2 deputies and a circuit judge. They found Lottie sitting on the porch with a blanket around her shoulders, eyes like polished stone. Trent asked no questions. The judge took one look at Ruth's copy of the deed and signed off on the title transfer within the hour. The Wren land was theirs, officially, legally, irrevocably. But nothing felt simple. Lottie stood beside her mother's grave again. This, a time, a new marker sat beside it. Gideon Rusk, father in blood, stranger in life laid to rest by truth. She placed a single wildflower on the stone, not for his sake, but hers. A final goodbye to the question that had haunted every empty chair at the table. Eli came to her side. "What now?" "We build," she said. "We heal." "You still mad?" "Always," she said. "But now I know who I'm mad for." Ruth returned to St. Louis 2 weeks later, leaving behind her Bible and a letter Lottie would never read out loud, but kept folded in her apron pocket like a map. Enoch stayed, not because of obligation, because love, when it's earned, roots deeper than any fence post. One evening, months later, as snow dusted the mountains and laughter rose from the hearth, Lottie looked around the table, at Eli's awkward growing limbs, at Enoch's weary smile, at the way the light hit the floor just where her mother used to stand, and whispered, "We're home." And this time, no one needed to leave to prove it. The end of the video. Thanks for watching.